Rule 13. Interpretative notes. Interpretative notes. The interpretative notes specified in the schedule in these rules shall apply for the interpretation of the source. Interpretation notes. General note. Use of the general accepted accounting principle. General accepted accounting principle refer to that recognize consciences or substantial authority support within the country at a particular time as to which the economic resources and obligations shall be recorded as assets and liabilities. The changes in assets and liabilities should be recorded, show the assets and liability and changes in them should be measured, that information should be disclosed and how it should be disclosed and which form financial statement should be prepared. This statement may be broad guidance on the general application as well detailed practice and procedures. Notes to rules. Note to rule 2. The rule 2 subclass 2 4. For the purpose of this rules, one person shall be deemed to be control another when former is legally or operationally in a position to exercise restraint or direction over the latter. Note to rule 3. Price actual paid or payable. The price actually paid or payable in a total payment made or to be made by the buyer to or for the benefit of the seller for the imported goods. The payment need not necessarily take in form of transfer of money. The payment may be made by way of letter of credit or negotiable instruments. Payment may be made directly or indirectly. For example, indirect payment may be settled by the buyer, whether it's wholly and part or debt owned by the seller. The activities undertaken by the buyer on his own account, other than those for which adjustment is provided in the Rule 10, or not considered to be indirect payment to the seller. Even though they might be regulated as the benefit to the seller, the cost of such account activity shall not therefore be added to the price actually paid or payable in determining the value of imported goods. The value of imported goods shall not include the following charges or costs, provided they are distinguished from the price actually paid or payable on imported goods. Charges for construction, charges for erection, charges for assembly, charges for maintenance, and charges for technical assistance, charges for undertaken after importation on imported goods such as industrial plant, managed machinery and equipment. Cost of transportation after importation and duties and taxes in India. These charges should not be included. The price actually paid or payable refer to the price for imported goods, thus the flow of dividends, other payment from the buyer to the seller that are not related to the imported goods and are not part of the customs value. Rule 3A3. Among restrictions which would not render a price actual paid or payable unacceptable are restricted, which do not substantially affect the value of the goods. For example, such restriction would be a case where the seller requires the buyer of automobile not to sell or exhibit him to prior to fix a date which represent the beginning of the model year. Not to sell exhibit him prior to the model year. Rule 3 to b. If the sale or price is subject to some condition or consideration which the value cannot be determined with respect of the goods being valued, transaction value shall not be accepted for custom purpose. Some of the examples: the seller establishes the price of the imported goods on a condition that the buyer will also buy other goods in specific quantities. The price of the imported goods is dependent upon the prices or the prices at which buyer of the imported goods sells other goods to the seller of the imported goods. Price is established on the basis in the form of payment extraneous to the imported goods, such as where the imported goods are semi-finished goods which have been provided by the seller on condition that he will receive a quantified quality of the finished goods. However, these conditions are considered relating to the production or manufacture of imported goods shall not result in rejection of transaction value. For example, the fact the buyer furnishes the seller with engineering and plans undertaken in India shall not result in rejection of transaction value of the purpose of Rule 3. Likewise, the buyer undertakes on his own account even though by agreement with the seller activities related to the marketing of the imported goods. The value of these activities are not part of the value of imported goods, nor shall such activities result in rejection of transaction value. Only result 3 class 2A3. Among restrictions which would not render price actually paid or payable unacceptable or rejection which do not substantially affect the value of the goods. For example of such restriction would be a case where a seller requires a buyer of the automobile not to sell or exhibit them prior to the fixed date which represent beginning of model. நல்ல இடத்துக்கு like note correct. Rule 3, Sub-Rule 3. Rule 3.3a and Rule 3.3b provides a different means of establishing the acceptability of transaction value. Rule 3.3a provides that the buyer and the sellers are related, and circumstances surrounding the sale shall be examined, and the transaction value shall be accepted on the value of the imported goods provided that the relationship do not influence the price. It is not intended that there should be an examination of circumstances in all the cases where the buyers and sellers are related. Such examination will only to require where there is a doubt about the acceptability of the price. The proper officer of the customer has no doubt about the acceptability of the price. It should be accepted without request further information from the importer. For example, proper officer customs may have an previous examined relationship, or he may already have detailed information concerning the buyers and the sellers, as may already be satisfied with the examination information that this relationship does not influence the price. Where a proper officer of the customs is unable to accept the transaction value without the further inquiry, he should use the importer and an exporter to supply such further details, information as necessary to enable him to examine the circumstances surrounding the same. In this context, a proper officer of the customs should be prepared to examine the relevant aspect of transaction, including the way in which buyer and seller organize their commercial relationship, as the way in which price of questions are right, or the order of the determine whether the relationship influence a buyer, whether it can be shown by the buyer and seller, although related under the provisions of Rule 2a, buy from and sell to each other as they may be related. That would be demonstrate the price has been influenced by the relationship. As example of this, if the price has been settled in a manner consistent with the normal prices practice of the industry in question, or the way the seller settles the price for the sales, the buyer who are not related to him. This will be demonstrate the price has not been influenced by the relationship. For further example, where there is shown the price is adequate to ensure recovery of all the cost plus profit, which is representative of the firm's overall profit realization over the representative period of time. Example of the annual basis. In sale of the goods of the same class or the kind, we should demonstrate the price has not been influenced. Rule 3.3b provides opportunity for the importers to demonstrate that the transaction value closely approximate to the test value previously accepted by the proper officer of the customs, and is therefore acceptable under the provision of Rule 3. When the test under the Rule 3.3b is met, it is not necessary to examine the question of influence under the Rule 3.3a. The proper officer of the customs has already sufficient information to be satisfied without further detailed inquiries. This one of the tests provided by the Rule 3.3b has been met, and there is no reason has been for him to require to the importer to demonstrate the test can be made. And in the Rule 3.3b means unrelated buyers, means buyers who is not related to the sellers in the particular case. Rule 3.3b. The number of factors must be taken into consideration in determining whether one value closely approximate to the another value. These factors include the nature of the imported goods, the nature of the industry itself, the season in which goods are imported, and whether the difference in the value is commercially significant. Since these factors may vary from one case to another, it would be possible to apply uniform standards such as fixed percentage in each case. For example, small difference in value in the case involving one type of goods could not be unacceptable, while large difference in the case involving another type of goods might be acceptable. Determine whether the transaction values closely approximate to the test value set forth in Rule 3, Sub-Rule 3, Rule 3, Subclause 3b. Notes to Rule 4. In applying the Rule 4, proper officer of the custom shall, whether possible, use sale of identical goods at the same commercial level and in substantially same quantity as the goods being valued. Where no such sale is found, sale identical goods that takes place under the one of the following three conditions we use: sale at the same commercial level by the same different quantities, sale at a different commercial level but a substantially same quantities, sale at a different commercial level and at a different quantities. Having found the sale under one of the three condition, adjustment with them by the maid, as the case may be, the quantity factors only, the commercial level factors only, both commercial level and quantity factors only. For the purpose of the Rule 4, the transaction value of the identical goods Yeah, important goods means value adjusters are provided under the rule 41B and C and rule 42 is already accepted under the rule 3. The condition for adjustment because a different commercial level, different quantity in such adjustment, whether it leads to increase or decrease in value, it may be made only on the basis of demonstrated evidence and clearly establish a reasonableness and accurate of adjustment. Example, the valid price list containing prices refer to different level of different quantities. As an example of this, it is imported goods being valued consistent of the shipment of 10 units and the same only identical imported goods for which transaction value exists involve sale of 500 units. And it is recognized the seller grain grants quantity discount and requires adjustment may be accomplished by resorting to the seller's price list. Using this price applicable to the sale of 10 units. This does not require that a sale had to be have been made in quantity of 10 as long as the price list has been established and being bona fide through the sales at other quantities. In the absence of such objective measures, however, determination of value under the provision of Rule 4 is not appropriate. No to Rule 5. In applicable to Rule 5, the proper officer of the custom shall, whether possible, use sale of similar goods at the same commercial level and substantial same quantity at the same goods being valued. For the purpose of Rule 5, the transaction value of similar imported goods means the value of imported goods adjusts the provided Rule 5 which is already accepted under Rule 3. All of the provision contained not on the Rule 4 shall be mutamoris also applied to the respect of similar goods. Note to Rule 7. The term unit price at which goods are sold in the greatest aggregate quantity means the price at which greatest number of units are sold in the sales to a person who are not related to the person from whom they buy such goods at the first commercial level after import and in which such deals take place. As the example, this goods are sold at a price list which grants a favorable unit price for purchase made in higher quantities. Sale quantity, units, number of sales, total quantity sold at each price. 1 to 10 units, unit 100, 10 sale at 10 sale for 5 units, and 5 sale for 3 units. Total quantity sold at each price 65. 1125, 95 units, 5 sale of 11 units. 55. Quantity 55. 25 units of unit plus 90. 1 sale of 30 units. Sale of 50 units. Unit price is the greatest aggregate value is 90. As another example, as if the two sale occurs, the first sale is 500 units or sold at the price of 95 a unit each, and the second sale 400 units sold for price 90 currency unit price. In this example, the greatest number of units sold with a particular price is 500. Therefore, the unit price in greatest aggregate unit is 95. The third example would establish situation where various qualities are sold in different ways. So sale 40 units 100 unit price and 30 units for 90 rupees, 15 units for 100, 50 units for 90, 25 units for 105, 35 units for 19, 5 units for total quantity we sold equal 60 for 90, 50 for 90, for 60 for 100, total 100. For the same greatest number of units sold in the particular price is 65. I'm choosing clarify the unit price of greatest aggregate is 90. Highest unit sold is unit sold and what is price. The sale of this India describe the paragraph on above the person who supplies directly indirectly free of charge a reduced cost for use in the connection with the production or sale of export of imported goods. Any of the elements specified in the rule 10(1)(b) shall not be taken into account in establishing unit price for purpose of this rule. It should be noted that the profit and general expense referred to rule 7(1) should be taken into whole. The figures of the purpose of deduction should be determined on the basis of information supplied by and behalf of the importer, unless the figures is inconsistent with obtaining the sale in India. Imported goods on the same class of kind, whether the importer figures are inconsistent. Of such figures, the amount of profit and general expenses has been used upon relevant information other than the supplier and by and behalf of the importer. The general expenses include the direct and indirect cost of marketing the goods in question. Local tax payable by a Rape or reason or sale of goods by which the deduction is not made under the provision of Rule 713 shall be deducted under the provision of Rule 711, determining either the commission or usable profit or general expenses under the provision of Rule 71. Question whether certain goods are of the same class of goods and other goods must be determined by the case by case basis of determining the circumstances involved. Seen in India, of the narrowest group or laid a range of imported goods and the same class or kind which includes goods has been valued or for which necessary information has been provided and should be examined for the purpose of Rule 7. Goods are the same class of kind, including goods imported from the same country for the goods being valued the same value as a good imported from other countries. Determining either the commission or usual profit or general expenses under the provision of 7.1. The question whether certain goods are of the same class or same kind, and as the goods must be determined on case to case basis by reference to the circumstances involved. Say in India, the narrowest group or range of important goods of same class or kind, which includes the goods being valued and being necessary information can be provided, should be examined for the purpose of Rule 7. Goods of the same kind, including goods imported from the same country as the goods being valued as the same good imported from other countries. For the purpose of Rule 7 to the earliest date shall be taken by which the sale of the imported goods or identical or a similar item imported goods are made in sufficient quantity to establish a unit price. There are methods and Rule 7.3 is used deduction made value added for further processing shall be based on objectives and quantifiable data relation to the cost of the work. Acceptable industry formulas and recipes, methods of construction and other industry practices would form the basis of this calculation. It is recognized that the method of valuation provided under the Rule 7.3 would be normally not be applicable when it is a result of further processing. The imported goods loses identity. However, there has been instance where although the identity of the imported goods are lost, the value added by processing can be determined accurately without the unrealizing difficultly. On the other hand, there can also be an instance where the imported goods maintain the identity but form such a minor element in the goods sold in the country of import that use of the valuation methods would be unjustifiable. In the view of the above, each situations of such type should be considered as case to case basis. Note to Rule 8. As a general note, the value of imported goods is determined under these rules on the basis of information readily available in India. In order to determine the compute value, however, it can be necessary to examine the cost of producing the goods being valued and the information which has been obtained from outside India. Furthermore, the more case a producer of the goods will be outside the jurisdiction of the proper officer. This use computed value method will generally be limited to the case where the buyer and seller are rated. The producer is prepared to supply to the proper officer necessary costing and provide facility to such subsequent verification. This may be necessary. The cost or value referred to the clause A rule A to be considered on the basis of information related to the production of the goods being valued and supplied by and behalf of the producer. It is based upon the commercial amount of the producer and provides such accounts are consistent with the generally accepted accounting principle applied in the country where the goods are produced. Cost of value. Some include the cost of elements specified in the clause 183, 182. Rule 10 shall include the value appropriate under the provision of the relevant note or Rule 10 or any other element specified in the Rule 10 1b which is be supplied directly indirectly by the buyer. For use of connection in the production of imported goods, the value of the element specified in the 10 1b4 which is undertaken in India shall be included only to the extent that the elements are charged to the producer. It is to be understood that no cost of value the elements referred to the paragraph shall be counted twice in determining the computed value. Amount of profit and general expenses referred to the clause B of A Rule 8 is determined on the basis of information supplied by on behalf of the producer, unless the producer figures are inconsistent with the actual reflecting in sales of goods of the same classes or kind Goods being valued, which are made by the producers of a country of exportation of export to India. It should be noted the context of the amount of profit and general expenses has been taken into one. It is followed that it's a particular place producer profit figures is low and general expenses are high. The producer profit and general expenses taken together may nevertheless the consistent with the usually reflected in the sales of goods and the same class of kind. Some situations might occur. For example, if a product were being launched in India and the producer accepted a low profit to offset the high general expenses associated with the launch. Where the producer can demonstrate low profit in on sales of the imported goods because of the particular commercial circumstances. His actual profit figures should be taken into account provided that he has a valid commercial reason to justify them and his pricing policy reflects usual pricing policy in the branch of industry concern. Such situation might occur. For example, producers have been forced to lower price temporarily because of the unforceable drops in demand. Whether they sell the goods or to complement of a range of goods being produced in India, accept a low profit to maintain the competitiveness. While the producers' own figures from profits and general expenses are not consistent with the usual reflect the sales of goods and same kind of goods being valued. This is made by the producers in the country and exportation of the for the export to India. The amount of profit and general expense may be based upon the relevant information other than the supplied by the design of the producer. General expenses refer to Clause B. Rule 8 covers the direct and indirect cost of producing selling the goods for export, which may be included in the Rule 8. Certain goods are the same kind of price must be determined by case reference to the accounts in one. In determining the usual profit and general expenses under the provision of rule, sale for export in India and the narrowest group of a range of goods, which include goods being valued for which necessary information can be provided, shall be exempt. For the purpose of the rule, a prior goods of the same kind or class of kind must be formed same country as the goods may be valued. Rule 9. The value of imported goods determined under the provision of Rule 9 should be greatest extent possible based on the previously determined customs value. The method of valuation to be employed under the Rule 9 may be those laid down in Rule 3 to 8, inclusive but reasonable flexibility in application. Such methods must be confronted with the aims and provision of Rule 9. Some example of reasonable flexibility has been followed. Identical goods. The requirement of the identical goods should be imported at about the same time of the goods being valued and should be flexibility interpreted. The identical import goods produced in the country other than the country of exportation of the goods shall be valued could be based on the customs valuation, customs value of identical import goods already determined under the provision of Rule 7 and 8 should be used. Similar goods. The requirement of the similar goods should be imported at or about the same time of the goods being valued to be flexibly interpreted. Similar imported goods produced in the country other than the country of exportation of goods being valued could be basis of the customs valuation. The customs value of similar importation goods already determined under the provision of Rule 7 and 8 could be used. Or deductive methods. The requirement of the goods shall be sold in the condition or imported. The Rule 7 should be flexible interpreted and 90 days of the requirement could be administered flexibly. A note to Rule 10. Rule 10 1AI. The terms buying commissions means fees paid by the importer to this agent for the service of representing him about the purchase of goods being valued.